Hello. Today's episode comes with a trigger warning about pregnancy loss. What a new day! Welcome back to the Loudmouth Birth Advocate channel. Please forgive my allergy throat here. It's definitely allergy season in Oklahoma. Windy days and rain and pollen and mold and things growing, and I'm just susceptible. So I've tried to manage my health on it, but it just doesn't stop the allergies. And today's going to be another reaction video. This time again, Call the Midwife. I'm looking forward to finding some new sources. I have tons of ideas. You've probably seen from previous episodes that there are plenty of birth scenes in TV, film, etc. that I really struggle with. And you get the benefit of watching that. However, Call the Midwife is one of my favorite sources of birth in entertainment because they do it well very often. And they have a consultant on staff to ensure that happens. So, creating a safe space for me until my voices give me some direction on what they'd like to see me be tortured with. One example in a previous video, actually I think it was probably even my first reaction video, Monty Python. One of my least favorite. Mansplaining, patriarchy, patriarchal medicine, just all over the place. Intended for humor, but very real for the time. And part of why I do this is because what we see in the entertainment industry often gets reflected at real life in society and communities. So, for instance, some people have made reproductive decisions based on beliefs they've formed based on what they've seen in TV and movies. And I'd like to change that because that's not real. Let's get into it. Call the Midwife. This is season 1, episode 2. I'm looking forward to this section that I've selected. Sister Evangeline. Poor gal. First day. I understand what that's like. One thing that I love about Call the Midwife, based on the premise of the show, part of the variety and the diversity of the show that expands over now 10 seasons and has consistently come up with
variations.
Not the same old drama every time. There's always variations. One of my favorites here is exhibiting that before birth control, it was very common for women to still be having their last baby when their oldest has their first. That the childbearing time frame is expanded. And if based on nature, if a woman just doesn't control when she gets pregnant, that's really common to potentially get pregnant between 16 and 48 or later, depending on when menopause hits for an individual. I like seeing the representation of older women being pregnant and being treated well before the research side of science for maternal health, where there was a little bit, tiny bit of a difference between health outcomes at 25-30 versus 35-40, and that has been blown out of proportion because out-of-hospital birth has shown that age doesn't play that much of a part in negative outcomes. So, let's get back to this. And now we're getting to another one of my favorite parts, the diversity of disability. This part of my reaction is going to be probably a lot less maternal health and more diversity and inclusion. Ableism is a term used to describe the perspective that there's a default bias in preference towards people who have their entire body functioning. I previously said I'm dealing with allergies. My body's not functioning entirely well. I wear glasses. I am visually impaired. Everybody's got some kind of physical impairment. So where is the range of what is acceptable and what is not? What is worth pity? Or in previous years in eugenics, which was the scientific focus of trying to make all humans the most perfect possible. Well, what is perfect? What's the definition of perfect? So I love the fact that this medical staff doesn't react to the fact that she's not completely able-bodied. She's had a past history of rickets, which, as the science of nutrition and growing food and better diet and access to food, which we've still got a problem with, but I'm not going to go there. There were a lot of nutrition-based disabilities or disease, including rickets. Just general malnutrition is too much of a contributing factor to this to say generally that women are growing bigger babies. Not really. If we can treat the cause, then maybe the outcomes will be better, and we'll be inducing women less or doing less C-sections because the baby's too big. Onward. So the rickety pelvis, nutrition is the cause of any potential problems that she's had before. Obstructed labor is what he says. It's not a problem with the uterus or the cervix. It's a problem with the pelvis. And it's not just that she has a problem with her pelvis, but that she had malnutrition as a child. So there's these contributing factors that lead up to it. If we focus more on prevention, which is a midwifery focus, not an obstetric focus. Midwifery focuses on prevention, and obstetrics is focused on treating complications when they happen. And that's not to say midwifery doesn't. The difference in the focus between the two. Okay, it was one of my favorite things to talk about. This is a prime example of the difference between obstetrics and midwifery. However, in this scene, in England, in a non-American country, it is well understood between obstetrics and midwifery the benefits of each other. There is much less contention and vilifying the other than there has been in the United States, at least up until recently. Hopefully, it seems like some of that has been changing in the United States. It's not a widespread change, though. What is happening in this scene is the obstetrician is staying focused on being emotionally controlled and objective and relying on, but this OB is relying on the midwife to provide the emotional care that's desperately needed because, as we see, she's gone through some trauma. Failed pregnancies is very traumatic for pregnant people. Part of what plays into that is the idea that what happens inside a person's body is their responsibility. But pregnant people can't control the pregnancy. There's only so much they can contribute to the health of that pregnancy. And in her circumstance, she really couldn't control the shape or anatomical features of her pelvis, keeping her from delivering a baby through a pelvis. So there's this understanding between obstetrics and midwifery in England during this time frame that both have very beneficial, necessary roles. And they rely on each other to fulfill those roles. And there'll be a little bit more on this here in a second. The quickening. I want to acknowledge something here. Pregnant people that have experienced pregnancy loss in the past. I'll give a disclaimer here. I have not had specific and direct training on this beyond personal experience and interaction with other people that have experienced pregnancy loss. Experiencing milestones of pregnancy after a previous loss is fraught with mixed emotions, can be intense mixed emotions. For instance, feeling baby movement, excitement that yes, this is evidence that the baby is okay. It can easily stimulate past memories and grief, and definitely sad feelings, maybe even depression, because those become a reminder of previous loss. And luckily, especially in midwifery, and hopefully with a good OB, these kinds of situations can be validated and acknowledged. Plays into what I've talked about in previous videos about motherhood bliss, the myth of motherhood bliss. It's a myth. New parents, mothers or not, the experience is not complete happiness all the time. It's not. Because it's life. Here's one of my favorite parts. Excuse the smoking. You made her feel safe. That's a mark of a good midwife. Everything else is just mechanics. This OB acknowledges the fact that it's necessary for especially traumatized birthing people, but anyone who is pregnant, to need to feel safe feelings, because it is a stressful, emotionally intense event. A recent video that I did talks about the different stressors that impact pregnancy and why pregnancy itself can be stressful. I just love that he acknowledged this and he recognized that this is important, not just for good bedside manner, but it's really good health care. This is a good stopping point. Those that know me know I can talk quite a while on these subjects, so I'll leave it there. Behind the scenes, what you didn't see is every time I do a video, there's always mistakes or restarts or hang on, I want to say that differently, or I want to say that without phlegm in my throat. Would you all be interested in a blooper reel? I think I've done a couple of those in the past, little short quips. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, if you've made it this far, obviously you did. So please give it a like. That's your feedback to me that yes, you made it this far. So please be kind to all your fellow human beings, no matter their diversity.